Due to the invasion of demons, humanity was forced to enter into battle against monsters in a struggle for survival. They must grow and exceed their limits if they want to be able to take revenge on the demon god one day. The story begins with listening to two individuals talking about a popular pastime to kill their boredom and complaining about the ceasefire agreed with heaven, since the battle is the essence for their existence. Then we are shown the demon god Helacion asking a demon if preparations are finished. In this way it is revealed that the individuals from the beginning were both demon lord Helacion and Alterius. Alterius responds by saying it is completed and can be carried out at any time. I hope you have a good time, and the demon lord departs while excited about how interesting the battle will be. After the demon lord departs, the protagonist of the story finally appears to challenge Alterius. He insults Alterius in the demon lord's absence, causing the demon to become enraged and start a fight. The protagonist strikes first, but the demon was already ready with another surprise attack, asking how a human could possess so much power. However, the protagonist clashes swords with Alterius. After takes a step back, he asks why humans were made to do those things. The demon responds that he doesn't need a reason to use lowly humans, as the power defies logic and the will of the demon god is absolute. Furious, the protagonist quickly cuts off one of the demon's arms, saying he's heard enough, and that the demon had no chance from the start. The protagonist then kills the demon and collects what appears to be a core for leveling up and defying logic. Then he promises to kill the demon god one day. We then jump forward in time and see a fierce battle between a goblin and our hero, who manages to defeat it with great effort. He decides to take rest to do smoke for a moment. This is when we know that he has already been in that world for 4 months since he came there. Suddenly, a noise approaching him and he gets on guard. He is attacked by a projectile from the bushes. Then a man appears, who calls the protagonist by his name. The man says he has confused him with a monster and apologizes. Protagonist asks him why he is in that area, and that knows he did it on purpose. Ignoring him, the man tells him it was a mistake and asks if he is still hunting goblins. The protagonist's appearance suggests he was struggling against a mere goblin. The protagonist replied, "Don't worry about it," and reminded the man that he said he no longer hunted goblins. Yet, he was there, so the protagonist knew he was lying when he claimed to be just passing from there. The man, no longer wanting to hide his true intentions, and hits him for the simple reason of smoking just as an excuse to mess with him. The man bullies him, referring to him as someone from evil and arrogant, gives him a few more punches and warns him about the next time they meet, and finally, he leaves. After getting all hurt from the beating, he gets up without giving it much importance to what happened and goes towards the corpse of the goblin. He says he has a nature of bully, although it is not very credible, and that he should have acted that way from the beginning when he got involved with that gang. He starts to cut the goblin's corpse, taking out items that can be sold in that world in exchange for points. In this world, specific parts of the monster can be sold in order to earn points. Then they can use that points in many ways. The points in that place are more important than money. However, in that sense, goblins are the rawest. The goblins have items like eyes or teeth that can only be exchanged for a small amount, and hunting them are also difficult than expected. But the main reason he works so hard to go after them is because they are the only ones in the area that have a chance of having a core in their heart, whose function is to increases the stats of those who consume it. Although their taste is horrible, he explains to us that even though this world looks like a game where factors like status and skill exist, but it is not easy to grow like it is in-game. But luckily he learned a method to become stronger with minimal effort by fighting and devouring, to escape from that world and then someday get revenge on those who threw him there. At nightfall, he returns home and tells someone he calls a master that he's arrived and will prepare dinner, but this person doesn't seem to respond, which worried him, and he approaches to check if master is still alive and regrets for his death. The master then hits him on the head for waking him up. They set out to eat and the protagonist feeds him. They talk about the possibility that he could have abandoned him in the forest instead of working so hard to feed him, but clearly he wouldn't do that. After they finished dinner, master asked him if he is able to find core today while hunting, on which he responds that he managed to find 1 core and consumed it as soon as he find it before anyone seen him, and took care of corpse as well. Master warns him that don't ever get caught, since this is a secret method that only they know about it. Protagonist tells his master that Helacion had returned from the eternal sleeping forest, someone who is in the top 300 ranks and has already been in that world for 8 years, which makes it strange that with his level he is in that area. He was wearing parts of a very powerful monster from the forest, and hanging them from his waist. Trophies that it would be worth 2 million points, something that tempted the protagonist. But he knew that he was not yet strong enough to go after those monsters. It would be suicide. His master reminds him that he should focus on the weak creatures, like goblins, because even though his progress is slower, but it is safer. And if he manages to be strong enough, he can go to the big city. He says he will take his master with him, to which his master responds by laughing and saying, "All right, grow stronger and help me." Those who come to that world usually settle down in that area where they also have to pay rent. That's why he wants to earn more points so he doesn't have to worry about paying rent, and move to the center of the village, since things are usually better when you get closer to the center of the village. He is looking for someone who seems to be missing suddenly. He is scared by someone who seems to be floating behind his back, and this person laughs at the protagonist, whom he considers to be amusing. Protagonist stands up and says that he came to do business and should be treated seriously. The person agrees and extends his wings. This was a demon, Krusta, the general administrator of the Mahdi village. With a snap, the demon makes a mark appear on the protagonist's chest. The mark is a symbol on the top of the heart for humans who have been dragged to this world, whose function is to store points. He notices that most of his points are spent on rent, but he will be back to buy some drink later tonight. To mock him, Demon says that there is no point in trying so hard if he can give himself up to the drink. But we see a determined look in his eyes to become stronger using a secret method, even if it is slow. According to his master, the growth rate of those who have the support of their clan and family is greater, and even more so if they have talent. The master explains that the growth rate of humans in this world are displayed as a number through their mark like a game status. There are 4 basic starter characteristics: strength, stamina, agility, and endurance. There are also additional categories, but those are the main ones. Each categories range from 7 to 1 with precise values and percentages. When you reach level 100% in rank 7, you can level up to rank 6. Here, we know that the protagonist started with skills below average, and that's why it is so difficult for him to move up. The people who were dragged to Helacion naturally created a group, clans, guilds, family. The names may differ, but the cause to get together is survival. As time passed, more and more people were dragged into that world, and a society gradually formed. With the passage of time, everything became a fierce competition, and the weaker ones were thrown away in this process. In his worst moments, the protagonist met his master. The master complained about how unfair it is that the protagonist has to buy potions to strengthen his statistics in order to fight normally in a game that is not based on the experience given by monsters and depends on weapon skill. The master concludes that in order to be on par with the competition between the clans to get close to a hunting grounds, he must have to increase his growth rate, and for that he must kill at least 50 goblins per day. The protagonist reaffirms that he knows he must continue hunting because the most dangerous are not the goblins, but the other humans, those who are of his class. He takes a break, and thinking he has killed enough this week and obtained enough cores and points to cover his master's forced house, his weapon will not last much longer, and he thinks of changing it. At that moment, a very large monster approaches him from behind and attacks him. The protagonist manages to dodge the attack. The monster speaks and says that he is the protector of his race, the chief Karakra. The protagonist remembers that his master mentioned the existence of intelligent and strong creatures among a race of monsters. The monster approaches at full speed. The fight begins. The protagonist struggles to evade the monster's attacks. The monster belittles him, saying that he is as weak and will allow him to land a hit. He is curious about the protagonist's nature and begins to tell him about the reappearance of goblins in the same area every day, about the system status windows, and as a cherry on top, he tells him that his species are monsters that reappear endlessly, created by the demons who brought humans there. The monster laughs, saying that his body is not like the rest, and challenges the protagonist again. He tells him that if he manages to hurt him, he will reward him with answers. After cooling his head, the protagonist attacks the goblin, who easily dodges it and uses his skills honed in the last 3 weeks to keep the goblin boss entertained. The goblin boss delays his answers until just before he gravely injured. The protagonist, who is in his final moments, thinks about dodging the killing attack, but he is too tired and demotivated. Then at that precise moment, his desire for revenge saves him, and the demons give him the impulse he needs. He wants to ask who sent him to that world, why they did it. The protagonist manages to slightly hit the goblin boss, and thanks to this, he answers that he was not dragged into that world. He came on his own. He got commissioned by the demon guys. Basically, he is mercenary who kill people for money. He knew how to get out, but he wouldn't tell him. The protagonist then attacks the distracted goblin boss, but since he is a goblin, he never thinks about the next attack. Taking advantage of this, the protagonist manages to stab him in heart and kills him. However, what actually happened was that the monster let himself to be stabbed intentionally. The goblin boss says he fought without remorse knowing that he is going to die. He sits next to the protagonist to tell him what he can. He explains that he is a mercenary who accepted a disadvantageous contract from demons and came there leaving behind family and friends because of contract. He could not go home for a long period of time. He feared losing himself in regret, anger, and shame. He is looking for an unsuitable end for a warrior. Therefore, he thanks the protagonist for having fought with everything he had and allows him to die as a warrior. Protagonist asks him why did he come here on his own. Goblin replied him that he is still a mercenary and mercenaries are bound to their contracts. That's why he cannot tell him much, since the non-disclosure was also part of the contract. This scene dissatisfied protagonist and he prepares to leave. But Karakra tells him to stay to give him some clues that do not infringe too much on the contract he made with the demons. Protagonist offers him a cigarette and he accepts due at his insistence. He then proceeds to tell him something that is not shown in the panels. At the end the boss thanks him and says that the cigarette was not bad for being humans. And thus a great warrior fell. Now the protagonist is arrived where Krusta is, and Krusta treated him in exchange for a price of 10,000 points. Without complaining, he hands over a bag with the items of Karakra and asks him to show what he can do with them. In this, we have a flashback where Karakra is shown saying that he should consume him by telling him about his core and not to follow human logic, that just because he is capable of speaking with him, he should not stop doing so. To Karakra it is an honor to remain with the winner. He suggests which parts of him to use and he dies apologizing. The protagonist admits that he felt like having a conversation with a friend and thanks him for lending his strength. Back at home, he shows his master the transplant of claws, who tells him that he has seen many TV shows but that it is a part of his body now, so it would be good for surprise attacks. The nails can evolve with him and have high durability. Master tells him the goblin bosses are monsters with pride and it was his first time he fought with an intelligent monster. He could have had an emotional exchange, something that his master noticed in his expression, and telling him that he should not doubt his growth despite it does not feel good after killing an opponent that you shared your heart. The Helacion is a world in which there are many monsters like humans who kill each other. You should not let yourself be influenced by your opponents. An example is a master who made that mistake. Ending the conversation on a positive note, the master encourages the protagonist to celebrate and feel proud of his victory and his level of growth. The protagonist is walking through the forest. He is already getting used to his claws and feeling motivated to become stronger so as not to disappoint his teacher, or Karakra, the guy we saw before. He bumps into his path again, who is not welcome. He says he heard from Krusta that he defeated a big monster and reminds him of a deadline to pay. The protagonist wants to kill him, but is protected by his guild. Although Helacion is similar to game, there was no such thing as HP. If you lose an arm, it stays lost. And in 6 days, he can choose his class and unlock a new statistic called Magic Power, which allows him to use skills. In this world, stealing or killing is trivial for humans. Those who have been here longer are safer. Thanks to their master and Karakra's help, the protagonist can strengthen himself to survive in this world. In order to that, he need to familiar with the new weapon by using a giant frog monster called Patcharas as a training companion. When he becomes more accustomed to his claws and to the giant frog makes a great jump and falls on him, but the protagonist, relying on the power of his claws, counterattacks using the puff frog. He admires his claws and feels prepared for his journey. It is time for the class selection in the Maudie Village Tower. He is feeling nervous and enters and finds a box, wondering whether to open it or not. He decides to do so, and from there a demon called Jack in the Box comes out. The demon shows him panels with the classes to choose from. Hunters get health, marauders get strength, explorers get agility, and guardians get endurance. He reviews his options, since each one gives different attributes, with the strength class being the most chosen. He thinks most of the well-known pros are marauders, and his teacher is also marauder, which would help him to give lot of advice. Despite all that, he decides to choose the hunter class, which gives him health, and he learns the respective skills of his class. He begins to think about how all this positively affects his growth. The demon interrupts him, saying that as special benefit he still has to choose a special skill. Without hesitation, he chooses lizard camouflage, to which the curious demon asks him about his reason. At first, he did not think it would be necessary to tell him, but the demon threatens him, surprising him by how serious he was. However, it was all an act, and after finishing, the demon wishes him luck in the challenge that awaits him. He leaves the tower, walks a bit, goes down an alley, and releases all the fear he felt inside. He thinks that if the demon of the choices is that strong, how is he going to face the others? Can he really escape from Helacion? The master was surprised by his selection of skill, and that gives him lesson of skill in that world. There are two ways to obtain skills. One is the unique skill distribution in the class selection that only occurs once, and the skill rings that can be bought with points or obtained from dead monsters. The value of the ring depends on its rarity. Buying them is not profitable because they are overvalued, and getting them from dead monsters is unlikely. Furthermore, the weaker ones give rings of very low rarity. In the end, you should have to go for strong monsters if you want a good skill. With this said, the master wants to hear his reasoning. He said that the lizard camouflage is not affected by how much magic power the user possesses and can evolve with their growth, so it will be more useful for him as he has very low magic power at the moment. In conclusion, the protagonist focused more on his current state. In the forest there are some monsters that will serve as practice, in addition to giving him cores. Protagonist uses his skill camouflage betting on strength and agility, something risky since his health and stamina also decreased. The monster is fast to dodge and attack, but he is able to adapt. Little by little, he gets used to the attack pattern and counterattacks, managing to defeat it. It was a tough battle, but he is now convinced that he chose the correct skill. He has the tools to become stronger. The Karakra's claws, his new skills, and the status redistribution. He only needs one more thing. This time he was lucky and got a core from this new monster, which strengthens it 6 times more than a goblin core. He decides to return to Krusta to exchange the points of the items he obtained from the Koilos in the last month. He is quite happy for the accumulated amount, but even more because of his statistics. He tells Krusta that he will not participate in the next forced hunt, aware of the point penalty it carries. He makes this decision to protect himself as he is not yet at the level of the others in his class. Exchange for absenting himself from the first forced hunt, which is very beneficial for low ranks. He will go to the unoccupied home zones. Upon returning home, he finds his master lying on the ground and beaten. His master tells him that he was attacked for information, and that they needed it for an expedition to an unexplored area. In addition, he said, there are still many unexplored areas. Discovering them first has a lot of benefits, and he knows about one of the candidates for their exploration location, so they mess with him to get information. Protagonist thinks it is unfair that they took advantage of his master's condition. But that is how the world works. Master asks him to avoid confronting his attacker, and protagonist does not plan to provoke him, but if he meets him, he will have to talk to him. He prepares to go on a hunt by redistributing his attributes. In the home zone, he encounters a monster rainbow snake whose points are worth a lot of points. Hunting it is an easy task, and he realizes that at that pace, he could finish all the monsters in that zone. He continues his monster hunt, and now he faces a golem that, although it was strong, is also slow. He collects his loot contentedly, as the zone is rich in points. He has accumulated enough points in recent days to surprise Krusta. It is unfortunate that the area of the house is dominated by the large clans, when they should all work together. As he hears someone approaching him, he was too absorbed to realize. He activates his ability and demands that the hidden person reveal themselves. The person who was hiding was a woman he met when he had only been in that world for a week. But she does not remember him. They both decide to draw a line between themselves and split the home zone. She teases him about his peculiar weapon taken from a movie. He tells her that drawing inspiration from movies is not bad, and she is unaware of his weapon's capabilities, but now is not the time to be distracted. He arrives at sunset, accomplishing his goals for the day, but is twice as tired from being constantly alert due to the woman. He tries to stop thinking about her when he encounters a goblin and uses it to relieve his frustration. Unfortunately, the goblin had a core, which tastes disgusting, and the woman witnesses him eating the heart. The girl looks at him horrified by what she just saw, and he tries to manage the situation, but she doesn't want to listen to him. She prepares to attack him because she thinks he is a psychopath. He, trying to avoid conflict, tells her that it is not convenient for either of them to face each other. More calmly, she decides to listen to his explanation. He lies to her, telling her that he does it because he takes care of his master and that it consumes many resources, so he has to resort to these methods. Although at first it was unbearable, he has gotten used to it. She does not look very convinced since he could have chosen animals, and why the heart? He tells her more lies that she doesn't buy. But she is already exhausted, so she will let it pass for now. In the end, he lost the girl, but at least he was able to keep his secret safe. The next day we see protagonist feeling proud of his new armor and thinking now he only has to buy the skill ring he wants and get the points needed to buy it in the days to come. When he arrives at the hunting zone, he finds same girl waiting for him to split the zones once again. They still don't get along, with something that happens earlier, but it doesn't worry him, since according to his master's experience, he should not trust anyone. At that moment, two individuals entered the hunting zone with the plan to steal points and items from other hunters who didn't join the force hunt. The protagonist, after hearing they were after the girl, decided to follow them and help her. It was the most convenient option, as they would eventually come after him and they would have a better chance in a 2-against-2 fight. The guys arrived where the girl was while she was battling a monster and intended to take advantage of the situation. The protagonist approached them stealthily, redistributing his stats and preparing to attack. One of them pulled out a shuriken to throw at the girl, but the protagonist warned her in time for her to avoid the vital points. The other guy, who was hiding, came out to finish the job while the protagonist faced the other. He received a kick to the head, but, to his surprise, he doesn't take any damage and defeated him with one blow. On the other side, the girl was hurt and struggling against the other guy, but before he could deliver the final blow, the protagonist arrived to save her. The other guy called him Rat for hiding behind them, a nickname the protagonist was pleased with. The fight with the fat guy begins, who turns out to be a martial artist and a strong opponent, especially in terms of physical strength. Before going all out, the protagonist asks if he was planning to kill them. The opponent said of course he is going to kill them and asked if the protagonist was going to beg for his life in last moments. With no other choice, the protagonist killed him by stabs him with his claws. After killing him, he feels nothing, as if he had killed a goblin instead of human. The girl asked why he saved her and he explained that he just did it because nothing ensured that they wouldn't go after him and he made the logical decision to protect himself. Slightly embarrassed, she thanks him for helping her. He teased her a bit by pretending he couldn't hear her, but they seem to get along now. The unconscious guy wakes up and is surprised to see his companion dead, as he was supposed to be the strongest of his unit. When he sees the girl, he runs away in terror, but she hasn't forgotten what they planned to do to her and takes her revenge by killing him. He tried to stop her, but she saw through his eyes that he didn't even try. We see a new method of point collection, which consists of extracting points from the corpses by placing the hand on the top of the mark on the dead. The dead's points temporarily go to the person who has harvested them, but they can store them permanently in the tower. The girl agrees to let him keep the points for helping her. She asks him to help her walk and they head to the tower to heal. On the way, they talk a little because it would take time to get there due to the girl's leg injury. When they reach the tower doors, she decides to continue alone, leaving Muhyuk behind. But before she leaves, she tells him her name, Soyoung, and he responds with his name, Muhyuk. Then she smiles at him in a friendly way. In tower, Krusta arrives to heal him and trade his points. Protagonist tells him that he got 2 marks during hunting. Krusta, with a mischievous smile, tells him that monsters are just for the environment. The key to survival is murder and reaving to grow in that world. Muhyuk replies that he just found some corpses who killed each other and give him his harvesting points. The two guys had 80,000 points between them. Now he can afford some higher quality skill rings. He thinks how quickly he has established himself and won't stop until he gets the answer he seeks from the demons. Then we move back in the hunting zone, where he tests his new ability, Fearful Baroque. It doubles his stats for 5 minutes, allowing him to kill the monsters in the bright forest as if they were goblins. The disadvantages are its short duration and that when it ends, his body becomes heavier. Additionally, the cooldown is high due to his low magic power. If his magic power were greater, his power would increase and skill cooldown time decreases. For now it is necessary to prioritize that, to reduce his cooling time, since it will be his wild card for crucial moments when he returning to the tower he meets those who went on the forced hunt. And again he meets the same guy who demands him for going on the hunt. He threatens him what will happen next time if he doesn't attend the next forced hunt within a month. At home, he prepares a delicious dinner before the forced hunt. His master gives him some last advice using John Chol as an example, the guy who always messes with Moo-hyuk. He does all this because during the hunt, it is better to have most resources and people under your control. Although, he is more than ready for the hunt. They start eating, and in his thoughts, he says, I knew I would never tell him, but he was already aware. If I have to do everything in my power, I will make sure to return alive. I will make sure to get out of this world with him. The moment had finally arrived. He was at the front of portal that led to the hunt. After entering, a demon named Karu shows them the hunting ground, the Tower of Time. The rules of the hunt are: 1. The 5th floor opens just for 1 day on the 10th day, and during 1 day those who do not reach it will disappear along with the tower forever. 2. Each person has to kill 100 monsters to enter the 5th floor. 3. In the head of each monster there will be black coins called tower tokens, which are worth of 1,000 points. They will all wear wristwatches, which helps them to keep track of the days to not get confused with the day. These watches also have another use. If you get another person's watch, you also keep their monster kills. At last rule, they cannot stay on the same floor for more than 1 day, otherwise their location will be revealed to everyone, including the monsters. Some are worried about the last rule since they cannot camp on one floor now. One strong guy assembles a member of his group saying they are the strongest so they don't have to worry, but in reality, he only thinking of using them and kill all of them at the end to take their points. Moo-hyuk, thinking that he was alone since he declined the first hunt, deprived him of relating to the people there, but he still had the opportunity to team up with a certain person. At that moment a red-haired girl approaches him and offers to team up. After all, she doesn't have many options either. Moo-hyuk extends his hand to shake hers, but she pulls him in a hurry and said there was no time to waste. After seeing this, John Jewel was enraged because Moo-hyuk ignores the offer to join his team, although in the end he also planned to kill him like he was with his colleagues. Apparently, the demons still had things to say, but everything hastened to start. Once they are inside, Moo-hyuk tells girl that they should come up with a plan and not go straight into action. But according her, if they do things fast then they have advantage. They reached a place where they have seen 3 paths and it is the time to make the first decision, but if in the end they have no idea what awaits them on either path. Suddenly Karu scares them from behind and gives them some final instructions that even though monsters are different on each floor but the danger levels are similar. Karu gives them wristwatches and explains that if they press button once they can see the monster kill count and press twice to see the location information, and if they press it 3 times they can see tower rankings. In addition, he said that stairs to each floor change locations daily, and on the 9th day, everyone will be transported to the 1st floor. They decided to pick the 3rd part and enter in some ruins while talking about how to proceed further, and they come across a strong monster, a ramen soldier. Protagonist thinks that at his current level it impossible for him to clear castle ruins alone due to the high density of monsters, so he decides to go ahead and pair. He uses his skills to boost his agility and health, provokes the monster, and goes for him at full speed. The first attack wasn't enough and he goes for another one. Seong watches in surprise at how fast he is. In the end, he defeats the monster on his own. That's it for this part. Please subscribe our channel for next parts.